Okay, so welcome everyone. We're going to get started here. So today we are doing a frontline worker training in gestational diabetes awareness and prevention offered by the IDHC. Our speaker is going to be Crystal Bomberry, who I'm going to introduce in a second. So this is session 1 in a 6-part series. We're going to run monthly on Tuesday. So this is session 1, which is the introduction to gestational diabetes awareness and the IDHC pregnancy toolkit overview. So for our training series, this is a 6-part series that runs the 3rd Tuesday of each month from 1 to 2:30. We've got a selection of great speakers. Crystal Bomberry is going to be leading the charge with our introduction today. She'll also be coming back throughout the series to talk about inner peace and stress reduction and nutrition and physical activity and help with some review of our toolkit at the end of this series. And you'll see me facilitating. I'm Jessica Pace, the knowledge coordinator at the IDHC. I'll be facilitating this series as we go. So this is a monthly training series. You can join us for 1 or 2 or 3 or all 6 in the series. Participants who do complete all 6 sessions will be eligible to receive a certificate of completion for our GDM prevention training. Registration will be required for each session, so keep your eye on our Facebook page for registration information each month. Okay, so our agenda today, we'll be talking a little bit about IDHC's vision and mission and our holistic model, a little bit about our gestational program in terms of an overview, an IDHC gestational program toolkit and pregnancy toolkit overview, a brief intro to diabetes and diabetes in pregnancy. We'll also talk about the importance of prevention and that wheel of prevention and management. So talking about our holistic model of GDM prevention and management. And Crystal will also close us out by talking about what is the role of frontline workers in gestational diabetes prevention, awareness, and support. Now I will introduce Crystal, our speaker for today. So Crystal is IDHC's diabetes wellness worker for the West region. Crystal is a Mohawk woman from the Turtle Clan from 6 nations of the Grand River Territory. She has worked with the IDHC since 2009. Crystal serves Indigenous communities, inspiring healthy change by encouraging everyone to be active and to eat foods that nourish body, mind, and spirit. You can catch her doing our online education series in physical activity and exercise. And among her many talents, Crystal is a certified CanFit Pro personal training specialist and an East to West yoga teacher. So you're in good hands with her. She's got lots of knowledge. Just a couple of housekeeping tips. Before we go ahead with Crystal's presentation today. So the session is being recorded and we will make the recording available to participants following the training. Your microphones have been muted by default and your video is off because this is a webinar format. But you do have the option to ask questions using the Q&A function. So as we go along today, if you do have a question for the speaker, you can put that in the Q&A box using that Q&A button. And we'll make sure the speaker has an opportunity to answer your questions. At the end of today, you will receive a survey link at the end of the webinar, and we really encourage you to please share your feedback with us because it does help us to plan and to create trainings that really serve your purposes. So with that, I'm going to welcome Crystal and invite her to share her screen with us and get going with her presentation.
Here we go. So good afternoon, everyone. Scano. Hello, my name is Crystal Bomberry. As Jessica said, I'm a diabetes wellness worker with the Indigenous Diabetes Health Circle. It is a really great pleasure to be here with you all today to offer some insights and just a very brief intro for today into gestational diabetes awareness and prevention, as well as give you some insights into our 7 Generations Gestational Diabetes Prevention Program. So I just wanted to welcome you all. I hope you're all having a great day so far, and I hope you enjoy this presentation. So I want to start off with our vision and mission. Our vision is that we're strengthening the capacity of Indigenous communities to reduce the incidence of diabetes, of type 2 diabetes in particular. Our mission is that we'll achieve that vision by supporting Indigenous communities, families, and individuals by promoting holistic wellness models, building on traditional teachings and best practices to develop and provide programs, education, and resources, and also building relationships and community capacity. So we recognize and respect personal choices, autonomy, and diversity. So we do run on a holistic model. Some of you may or may not be familiar with the IDHC, and we operate through 3 departments. Our body department, which is our foot care program, mind, which is our knowledge program, under which this training will fall under, and the spirit, which is the diabetes wellness program. And that's typically the program that I operate under as a diabetes wellness worker, providing services throughout Ontario in our communities. So the 7 Generations Gestational Diabetes Prevention Program is really intended to raise awareness about gestational diabetes in the Indigenous community. We're also trying to promote healthy lifestyles during all stages of pregnancy and birth. And we're encouraging women to explore their cultural teachings and stories surrounding pregnancy and parenting. So we realize also that we have many, many different First Nations, and within those different nations, various teachings. So the idea here is to integrate whatever we can with from different communities in order to benefit the women who are utilizing these services and the frontline workers who are obtaining training from the program. So the model, as you can see here, is, as I said, focused on before, during, after, and beyond. So with the before, we're really talking about preparations for pregnancy, decreasing the risk of gestational diabetes in our communities, promoting healthy bodies in preparation for pregnancy. And then during, increase in healthy pregnancies, we want to really promote all those different aspects of self-care and education, and also promote management strategies in the case of diagnosis. So that involves obviously other services and education. And then for after, safe holistic birthing and cultural practices and safety. And then beyond the pregnancy, reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes for mom and baby, and also increase traditional parenting awareness. So before we get into the other slides, I wanted to just mention that typically this training comes with a facilitator's toolkit, and that toolkit involves lots of awesome resources here. I'm just going to give you a brief look at it. We have our standard information pack here, which involves the IDHC folder and several key resources. We have the Aboriginal Fathers Guide. We have our Make It Sacred cookbook, which actually was developed in partnership with a dietitian and a chef, and includes lots of nutritional information with regards to how we can incorporate healthy food options within our programming in our various organizations. We also have in here a water diffuser, okay? Some of you may or may not use these. We can add fruits, vegetables, mint leaves, whatever it is you want to add to, increase the appeal of your water. And then there's also a USB stick containing several different resources here, the digital resources that you'd be able to utilize in your programming. And there is a seed pack, okay, for planting. And there's also a small sample of lavender essential oil and a rose quartz crystal. and of course, just a pen. So these are some of the things that you would receive in your facilitator's toolkit. Currently, there is also a facilitator's guide. So the guidebook looks like this, and it contains lots and lots of information and various sections that will basically let you know how you can run workshops within the community to increase awareness about gestational diabetes and the education surrounding that, as well as prevention and management strategies, and just lots of great information in there. There's also a section on nutrition and physical activity. So we're going to get more into those subjects a little bit later on. As you know, I'm going to be doing a nutrition webinar combined with physical activity a bit later. The next part that you would receive for your clients or expectant moms is the Pregnancy Wellness Toolkit. Okay, so it's essentially a tote bag, and the tote bag contains the prenatal yoga DVD, again, a water diffuser, portion plates for the family, and again, more information and various paper resources that will help with increasing that education and promoting healthy living, as I said, before, during, and after pregnancy. So I realize that we're going to have a variety of people here with a variety of backgrounds and different levels of knowledge about diabetes. So I'm just going to very briefly get into the three main types of diabetes. Type 1 being where the pancreas does not produce insulin. Therefore, the client is insulin dependent, and they're obtaining their insulin through injections or an insulin pump. And typically about 10% of those living with diabetes are type 1. For type 2 diabetes, this is where the pancreas produces some insulin, but perhaps not enough, or the produced insulin is not used properly, okay, so known as insulin resistance. And approximately 90% of those people living with diabetes are living with type 2. This is what we're highly focused on at the Indigenous Diabetes Health Circle, because we realize there are numerous avenues to take and approaches to take to promote healthy lifestyles for diabetes prevention. And also in the cases of diagnosis, we want to make sure that we're promoting reduced risk of complications through healthy lifestyle behaviors. And then there's gestational diabetes, which is our focus for this series. And gestational diabetes occurs during pregnancy and typically disappears after birth, but there is an increased risk of type 2 diabetes for both mom and baby later on in life. And with regards to the screening and the management and follow-up, those will be more closely looked at in webinar number 2, where we have our colleague Georgia Baum joining us for that session. So some of the characteristics of gestational diabetes here, normally insulin is the key that unlocks your body cell doors and allows sugar from the bloodstream to enter the cells and be used for energy. So this is our normal process of energy metabolism and use. During pregnancy, however, the pancreas must produce up to 3 times more insulin, and not all bodies can accommodate this demand. So it is theorized that the hormones produced during pregnancy interfere with insulin function, again, which is a form of insulin resistance. And the result here is that extra glucose crosses the placenta to the baby, resulting in high blood glucose and possible fetal effects if left undiagnosed or unmanaged. So it's important to note here that gestational diabetes can affect all women. There are risk factors, which will be reviewed in session 2 as well. But gestational diabetes can affect all women, and there really is no way of knowing who will be affected. So some considerations with regards to being pregnant with GDM. It is often considered a high-risk pregnancy due to the complications that can arise, again, which will be reviewed later. There's a need for additional healthcare specialists and very close monitoring throughout the pregnancy. There's often extra appointments that are needed and tests that may be necessary. And again, this would obviously vary case by case depending on the individual circumstances. And there's an education, a real big need for education on gestational diabetes itself with the mother, and extra emphasis on good self-care, healthy lifestyle planning, and self-monitoring along with the clinical management aspect and care. So our program here with the 7 Generations Gestational Diabetes Prevention Program aims to create awareness around gestational diabetes and promote healthy lifestyle behaviors, again, before, during, and after pregnancy. So that is our main focus. So some other considerations here regarding being pregnant with GDM around delivery. Glucose levels are closely monitored during and after delivery. C-sections are common due to the size of the baby. And postpartum breastfeeding is highly encouraged. Continued emphasis on self-care and healthy lifestyle planning and behaviors is very important. And then also further medical follow-up at 6 weeks and 6 months. So significance for Indigenous communities. There are many reasons why this is so important for us who are frontline workers within our communities, because as we know, as it is with type 2 diabetes, the rates are very high, and it's the same thing with gestational diabetes diagnosis. So our rates of type 2 and gestational are significantly higher than in the general population. So gestational diabetes is a risk factor for type 2 diabetes development. So as you can imagine, if we're seeing the high rates of type 2 diabetes development, we want to make sure that we're putting as much education out there as possible for expectant moms in order to prevent a type 2 diabetes diagnosis, right? And also good management if a diagnosis happens. So it's very key in preventing further type 2 diabetes incidents and potential complications that can come with diabetes. So another reason this is so significant is because it is an opportunity for us to build capacity within communities to educate and empower all women, whether expectant or planning to conceive, to plan for and engage in healthy lifestyles within their capabilities. And we say that again because we have to work with people based on what they have available to them, their resources, their supports, and all of that. So we want to ensure culturally safe programming for greater participation, effectiveness, and outcomes. So getting into the wheel of prevention and management here, we promote that wellness begins before pregnancy and in the womb. And I say and rather than, I say and because sometimes wellness and healthy lifestyle behaviors aren't necessarily present all the time, but if it's not before pregnancy, we want to make sure that we're getting there during the pregnancy. So sometimes people aren't too conscientious of their lifestyle behaviors until they're pregnant, and that's okay. So we want to make sure that we reach them at least at that point. However, we are always promoting that wellness begins before pregnancy in preparation. We also need to look at the whole person and their individual situation, not just the gestational diabetes diagnosis itself or the risk of it. So you can see here the mind, body, spirit, and emotion approach. And with regards to the spirit, we're focusing on traditional teachings and medicines. Again, that's going to vary from community to community. Holistic birthing, cultural safety. And with regards to the mind, education, empowerment, and good minds teachings, whatever those might be. I know for myself, being from Six Nations in Haudenosaunee, we have teachings around the good mind, and it really kind of guides that. We know that having a good mind kind of really determines the path that we take. So we want to make sure that mind and education is a big priority there. And emotion, we're talking about, emotional self-care, reducing stress, sort of cultivating that inner sense of peace and balance, and providing emotional wellness and support, or promoting that. And with the body, those other aspects of physical well-being, okay, such as nutrition, healthy eating practices, water intake, physical activity, sleep, and rest. So those will be discussed in a little more detail later on. So with regards to the spirit aspect, there are a lot of things to consider here. Traditional teachings in various communities, medicines and remedies that might be used, in preparation for and after delivery, and also just general overall well-being. Sometimes we have medicines that we can take just to promote overall health and wellness. And then of course, things like aromatherapy for calmness. Again, cultural safety training, if possible, how to help grow a spiritually strong baby, and nurturing the mom or baby energy connection. So that's highly spiritual, because we know that these are things that we can't see, but we can feel it, we can nurture it, and we can cultivate that connection with the baby in order to ensure that mom is taking as many measures as possible to stay healthy and connected with her baby. Other aspects here in regards to spirit teachings is learning about and restoring cultural birthing practices and teachings. So there's various aspects to this. I know in my own community, there's teachings about the soft spot. There are naming ceremonies. There are practices with regards to the placenta and the umbilical cord. We're referring to stories here, bringing back oral traditions of pregnancy and birth, and then also focusing again on cultural safety, okay, pregnancy and birth, midwifery and doulas, birthing centers and their approaches. So holistic birthing during high-risk pregnancies, what does that look like and how can it be achieved? And then with the mind aspect, again, going back to education, expanding our knowledge, expanding our consciousness with regards to the many different areas of care here and the broader aspects of self-care. Good mind teachings, again, reducing stress, right? So bringing our mind to a calmer place so that the body can follow that lead, getting adequate sleep for resting the mind, and also practices like meditation that assist with mindfulness and present moment. So education, we know, leads to self-empowerment. The more tools and resources we can give to people, the better able they will be to engage in these healthy lifestyle behaviors and prevent or manage gestational diabetes. So self-care here, when we talk about that, we're talking about for both parents, both partners, if both partners are involved, or a support person. We have to remember that sometimes the immediate partner is not present. We're always encouraging that self-care for their supportive person, their supportive partner. Be mindful of thought or thought patterns and learn the discipline of having a good mind and learning about those good mind teachings if they're available. So again, going a little bit deeper into stress management and reduction, we're talking about healthy coping mechanisms such as meditation, breathing, essential oils, exercise, journaling, breathing practices, mindful movement. I am a big promoter of exercise and moving energy. So, being mentally connected to what it is we're doing, that's mindfulness, right? Having intention and being presently aware of what we're doing and connected. That's really important because I find that when anybody is in a high state of stress, they often feel like their mind is off in a different direction while their body is physically here. So really promoting the mind-body connection and that present moment awareness is extremely important in overall health. And then mental rest. Of course, this is just as important as physical rest and going to sleep. When we get adequate rest, we are reducing, excessive mental stimulation, and we're also allowing for the mind and body to rejuvenate together as one. Sleeping comfortably as pregnancy progresses. These are also other things to discuss and explore. In the area of emotion, emotions are energy in motion. So bringing awareness to this is really important. I find that it's something that isn't always addressed in various programming. And, understandably so, because we want to make sure we have the right supports in place for people when they're dealing with challenging emotions. So we have to remember that emotions are affected by the hormonal changes that are happening during pregnancy, as well as the physical changes that are going on. Being conscious of our thoughts can guide how we feel. So this nurtures a sense of self-control and regulation. So if we can promote those healthy coping mechanisms, it gives, I guess, more hope, more optimism, and again, increases self-confidence in the ability to self-control and self-regulate to a certain degree. Developing emotional awareness and healthy coping mechanisms for challenging emotions is extremely important, and integrating any traditional teachings possible around that is very nice to include and helpful. More here about emotion, just acknowledging that many fears and insecurities can surface during pregnancy, and that grief is a common one because many women feel that due to the changes happening to their body, that they're also having changes in freedoms that they once felt prior to pregnancy. So it's really vital that both partners feel secure and calm during pregnancy, and also that the prevention of prolonged stress is a big priority. especially for mother and baby, because again, they're so deeply connected that what affects mom will affect baby. So that's a big focus of that. So there's several different aspects here to education around the body and self-care. Nutrition, we will explore that more deeply later on. Physical activity, sleep, deep relaxation. And again, this is an important subject because a lot of people believe that, you know, relaxation is doing things like watching TV. And although it is a low activity, I guess you could say like a low intensity activity that feels relaxing, it's actually very stimulating. So we're stimulating thoughts, we're stimulating brain waves and different thought processes in our senses. So deep relaxation really involves not a lot of stimulation. It really involves some degree of, you know, stillness and some degree of disconnection from all of that regular stimulation and distraction that we experience every day. So deep relaxation exercises, guided imagery, taking a walk amongst nature, those kinds of things help to more deeply relax. And we'll later as well, because I think that's a huge aspect of, you know, prevention. You know, being able to relax and send healing messages to the body is a big aspect of diabetes prevention and management. Essential oils can also help to relax the body, and there's numerous different impacts and positives that come from that. And of course, adequate water intake. There's lots of cultural teachings around water as well. We believe that water is life. It is the basis of our existence. It is, you know, it is what connects us within our own bodies. It lubricates the joints. It provides hydration. It regulates body fluids. And of course, as we know, our growing babies are immersed in that, that amniotic fluid. And so it's, you know, even more important that mom is taking good care of her health and, you know, having a good intake of water in order to promote healthy waters for the baby. And also other self-care practices that are relevant. So there's a lot of different aspects to the nutrition. These are just some main aspects that I wanted to include for today. Of course, basic education around nutrition, such as a balanced plate, having a variety of foods to ensure that we're receiving all the essential nutrients. Label reading, blood sugar friendly foods, which we'll talk about later. Blood sugar friendly foods are basically foods that, you know, don't have a really high, I don't want to say they don't have a high calorie content, but they're gentler on the blood sugars. So we're talking about things like whole grains and fibrous vegetables and fruit. Those are blood sugar friendly foods. Whereas, you know, as opposed to highly processed and packaged foods, which generally cause sharp spikes in blood sugars. So we want to make sure that we're promoting blood sugar friendly foods, and that goes for everyone. That's a big part of our programming, not just with regards to gestational diabetes awareness and education. Also talking about frozen, fresh and canned foods and water intake again, and different types of monitoring practices like keeping a food diary. So sometimes it's easier to get a good look at you know, it's easier for moms to get a good look at what they're eating and if they keep a diary where they're keeping track of their meals and snacks. So those are different little tools that can be integrated into the nutritional programming as well. Mindful eating practices. This is talking really about our relationship with sacred food. And we have a resource called the Make It Sacred resource, which is really essentially emphasizing traditional foods, but where traditional foods are not always available, we're emphasizing whole, real food. So that's really a broad subject because we want to make sure that we're promoting these mindful eating practices so that we can bring attention to, you know, when are we eating? Why are we eating? How much are we eating? So there's all these different things to consider with regards to mindful eating, and we'll get into that later on as well in the other webinar session. Community programming. So this is the other aspect. This is, most of you are probably frontline workers. This is the other aspect of the education as well. What types of foods are we providing during community programming? We want to make sure that we're promoting healthy meals, right? And wherever possible, if we're providing meals for community members during programming, that we're making sure again that there's a variety of foods, that we're having, you know, the balanced plate idea, and that the foods that we serve are holistically beneficial. Okay, so that means good for body, mind, and spirit. Can also plan community kitchens and cooking classes around that. And then, looking at different food sources, always encouraging, when possible, local farmers markets and community gardens. And of course, when that's not available, sometimes it's the grocery store. So making sure that we can navigate the grocery store in a way that allows us to obtain healthy foods. With physical activity, there's a lot of considerations here that I'd like to emphasize. And we need to make sure overall that we're encouraging daily physical activity. Obviously, at least 30 minutes a day. And again, this is going to vary from person to person because it is also going to depend on their current health status, their level of physical fitness, and their capability to engage in certain activities. But overall, typically, there is some level of activity or some types of activity that we can all, make sure that we undergo for at least 30 minutes a day to receive the overall benefits of exercise. So we also want to talk about the specific benefits of exercise during pregnancy, and that'll come a bit later as well. As we know, exercising during pregnancy will, greatly enhance our ability to withstand the demands that pregnancy places on the body, as well as recover more easily afterwards, as well as enhance our ability to withstand the demands of labor and delivery. So safe exercising during pregnancy, it's also a big consideration, and there are guidelines to follow for that. Exercise that is appropriate to the individual. And I like to emphasize the concept of moving energy. So we are energy beings, but moving energy within our body. Okay, so we're promoting good blood flow, which is also promoting that good oxygen and nutrient flow to all of the extremities, to a growing baby, to all the vital organs, and making sure that we're just all around feeling balanced. And again, with physical activity, making space, right? Making space and maintaining and improving joint mobility, range of motion. A lot of times people think that, flexibility, for example, is that we do stretching exercises to become flexible. I don't really like to promote that. I learned from one of my yoga teachers that we don't have to push for flexibility, but maintaining healthy motion, right? Some people will never be flexible, and that's okay, but just to promote that motion that lengthens the muscles and gets mobilizes the joints. So also strengthening the muscles, of course, with resistance exercise, various forms of resistance exercise, whether it be through free weights, body weight exercises, or equipment at a gym, whatever is available to the individual, and also improving the heart and lungs through appropriate cardiovascular activity. And when I'm promoting physical activity, I like to emphasize steady breath, right? And so this is something that we can integrate into our daily lives on its own, right? Breathing practices, but then just to remember that it's always a big focus when exercising as well. So it is a form of mindfulness, it is a form of cultivating presence. So another aspect of the programming is partner involvement. We want to keep partners involved throughout the whole pregnancy, if possible, and make sure, again, that if there isn't a partner involved, that there's a support person. And we want to be mindful to use inclusive language and practices in supporting a variety of family structures or partners. Be aware of the comfort level in providing services. So sometimes there are personal stories. How do they feel about the pregnancy? And just as being as supportive as possible throughout that. Often forgotten, sometimes the partners are overlooked because there's so many demands and so much focus, of course, on the mom and the baby. But we have to remember that they are also a big part of this equation, and they are sometimes overlooked during the high-risk pregnancies. So they also feel the stress and the anxiety. They are looked to for support, and they need to also be supported by frontline workers, okay, so that they can feel better able to support their partners and play a very, very important and positive role in that equation. What are some successes in programming involving partners? This is something that you can ask yourself when you're providing programming. Obviously the partners will share a greater sense of connection with each other, and they will embrace themselves and each other's roles more deeply. Another aspect and important consideration here is cultural safety. We need to understand how a caregiver's culture and assumptions has an impact on clinical encounters and patient care. So as frontline workers, we want to minimize risk. We want to provide support and possible advocacy if necessary. So you're all probably working with community members in your various programs, and in order to play a positive role here, we want to make sure that we're listening and taking any concerns that they bring forth to us. And you know, if sometimes people need that advocacy. So if somebody's expressing a concern or a gap in their services, or they're feeling like they're not heard, it is really important that that's followed up on, so that they can get the appropriate care that they need, and the appropriate follow-up as well. So a big focus, always providing that safe, healing environment. So a couple of reflective questions here. How can you incorporate or encourage cultural safety with the medical health teams of families that you work with? Is there anything that the IDHC 7 Generations program can do to assist in developing cultural safety practices within health teams? So it's something to think about, something to discuss further. We're always open to any comments or suggestions about that. So you might ask, what is the role of the frontline workers in gestational diabetes prevention, awareness, and support? So there's a lot of things that we can do here. And again, this might involve more discussion, might involve questions from you, or maybe some comments about what you're currently doing in your workplace in regards to providing support for your community members or education. So first thing, create awareness of gestational diabetes within the workplace and within your team. I think this is a big one. The bottom line is diabetes is a big issue in our communities, and we do need more. We do need more attention to it, and we need more collaboration. So we're always looking to collaborate and network with as many organizations and frontline workers as possible to bring this information forth and to provide these opportunities for frontline workers and community members. So really bringing awareness to the subject, getting those discussions going, and seeing if there's an opportunity within your team to provide some types of initiatives that will assist with prevention and management strategies. Expand your own knowledge as a frontline worker, right? So expand your own knowledge, learn as much as you can. This is one step towards that. There are many other resources out there that you can utilize to expand your knowledge and your background in the area, just for awareness purposes. Maybe you don't work directly in diabetes, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that you can't be an important support and collaborator. So we also want to nurture a supportive space for moms to be. So I, as a diabetes wellness worker, I've worked with a couple of groups within my region who have prenatal groups. And so I've been able to bring forth a lot of our resources in that sense as well, and provide lots of education around healthy lifestyle behaviors that can, again, prevent and manage. So provide information and programs aimed at promoting general healthy lifestyles and healthy pregnancies. So even if it's not diabetes specific, still always focusing on that holistic wellness aspect, and then possibly integrating and bringing awareness to this subject wherever possible is a great step. Connect with and integrate local elders and traditional teachings where possible. So I find that a lot of our cultural teachings are real eye-openers for people. They start to feel, I guess, a greater sense of connection with their culture, with their surroundings, with their community, and of course within themselves, because a lot of our cultural teachings bring our awareness back to ourselves and really reflect on our purpose, right? Like our purpose of sharing teachings and passing things down to one another. I think that's a really big, for me personally especially, a really big benefit of having traditional teachings and elders be integrated into the programming. It's so important, because that's where, that's kind of the foundation of our communities. So also be a supportive link between community members and mainstream or other Indigenous organizations when needed. This is a big thing for our workers here at the IDHC. We are consistently a support between our communities and frontline workers, and also between our communities and mainstream services. So sometimes community members will contact us with regards to their diabetes and express, frustrations with management and things like that, and we have to point them in the right direction, especially if they don't have a current healthcare team. So we're definitely a link between them and mainstream services or other Indigenous organizations. We want to make sure that they have as many tools and resources possible and available to them to, again, take control over their lifestyle situation, or, you know, as I said before, potential outcomes. So we're also trying to connect with other supports, right? So if you're looking to integrate more programming into your community, you can also connect with the IDHC. Okay, so you've got a head start here by participating in this webinar series. We are always gladly willing to participate and collaborate and create programs for the community that will, again, help us with this mission of preventing and managing diabetes and gestational diabetes. So we have lots of resources that you might have seen on our website. We have these resources in the Facilitator's Toolkit and the Pregnancy Wellness Toolkit as well, that, you know, is available to you if you would like to get in contact with us to obtain those for your programming. So that's really all of what I was going to say for today with regards to the introduction. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for now so that I can come back to the chat. Oh, I see there's 21. Jessica, did you want to?
Yeah, hi, Crystal. Thank you so much. That was so informative, so lovely. I do have a question waiting here I'll get to in just a second. I'll just draw everyone's attention. Some people have been asking, mentioning things in the chat box, but there is that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So
yes,
if you'd like to ask a question, you can ask it there, and I'll let Crystal know what the questions are. Okay, so Crystal, the first question, I remember learning about physical activity for pregnancy. They taught us not to begin anything new. What if the new mom has never been doing anything before and wants to begin?
This is true. I've also, in my pregnancies, was told, you know, not to necessarily engage in new or strenuous exercises that you've never done before. I think the most important thing is to consult with your healthcare provider and examine your fitness level, your current level of activity, your health status. There are many considerations there are many things to take into consideration before engaging in new exercises. So I definitely don't recommend, you know, trying a bunch of new things. This is something that needs to be overlooked by a healthcare team. And so that's, you know, that's really important. So I wouldn't really, you know, I wouldn't really say, oh, here, do this. You know, it's not something that I do. I do try to, when I'm talking with people, I get an understanding of where they're at, right? And that's important. So did you want to add anything to that, Kimberly? Any other further thoughts to that?
No, I'm not seeing anything else. I do encourage people to throw questions out there. We do have some time here. Oh, Kimberly says, sounds good. But we do have lots of time for questions, so please do type questions in the box if you do have time. I wonder if in the meantime, Crystal, you might want to show again a couple of the pieces of of the toolkit. We didn't really mention at the beginning, but everyone who participates in any of the sessions of our 6-part series, if you fill in our evaluation at the end of today or at the end of any of the other parts, you are eligible to receive one of the pregnancy kits, have them sent to you free of charge. We also have a facilitator's kit, and those people that do participate in all 6 sessions, and we will be tracking that, you'll also have the opportunity to receive a facilitator's kit at the end.
So definitely, just to reflect a little further on what Kimberly mentioned, that is definitely true for somebody who has not done any physical activity. I would not recommend moving into a physical activity routine suddenly. So it's something, again, I want to make that very clear to all participants here, that if there are any types of concerns or, as I said, issues with mobility, especially, or if it's a high-risk pregnancy, Mona has mentioned here the PAR-Q readiness questionnaire for pregnancy, which is very, very important. I want to make sure I emphasize that. You can always Google the regular PARQ form as well as the PARQ readiness questionnaire for pregnancy. So if the person clicks or checks off yes on any of those questions on that questionnaire, they have to have doctor's clearance, right? So if the person doesn't normally exercise and doesn't have any issues that are indicated on that questionnaire, I'm sure walking is a fairly standard exercise. So let's keep in mind that something as simple as walking can go a long way in terms of promoting mobility and that just good all around sense of wellness, right? So walking is a great exercise. So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, I do agree, and I do emphasize that it's good to have that consultation with somebody qualified before starting new activities.
Thank you, Crystal. We've got another couple questions here. So one is, are there any mental health trends with people who have GDM?
I am not qualified to answer that question. I would sooner wait and see if Georgia has anything to add on to that with regards to webinar number 2. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Okay, I will make a note of that for our next session. I certainly think that, we would probably see that there is a risk for some additional strain during pregnancy in terms of mental health if you were dealing with GDM, since that's just another thing to focus on and manage. And I think there's lots of fears and concerns that do come along with that.
And I did touch on some of those things in the PowerPoint. But I don't know specific mental health concerns that might be associated with GDM.
Perfect. Okay. And do you have any knowledge about traditional medicines that pregnant individuals should avoid?
Again, that is a question that would be specific to different areas. I know that different communities have different types of traditional medicines. And because I'm not a traditional medicine practitioner, I will resist commenting on that as well. So I apologize. I just think it's really important that we consult with our local traditional practitioners before, obviously, and with our healthcare professionals before engaging in a traditional medicine before engaging traditional medicines. I just think that's important to make sure we have the proper consultations in place.
Absolutely.
But I will say that I am aware that certain medicines are meant to perhaps progress labor and delivery, and certain medicines are meant for maintaining overall health and wellness prior to conception, during the pregnancy. So there are, as I know, certain medicines that are relevant to certain stages of pregnancy, as well as post self-care.
Okay, another person has asked me if these sessions are being recorded, and yes, the session has been recorded. All the sessions will be recorded. And if you have been a participant, I will send around the recordings, and I will send around as well a copy of the slides for you to peruse after. I know sometimes people need to go back and check in with what they've heard or listen more deeply. So we will make sure to get you those resources within a couple of days of each session. We do have a little more time here. I'm not seeing any more questions at the moment, but we'll give people another minute.
There was some comments in the chat, remember? Will the slides be, oh yeah, so.
Yeah, I answered those as we went, so we should
good.
Okay. There. What I will pull up here now is just going to make visible my screen here. I will just mention that we do have the next upcoming training in this series. Some of the questions that have been asked deal with a more clinical focus, and I want you all to know that you're more than welcome to join us. Please do join us on October 20th. It's a Tuesday from 1 to 2:30 p.m. We will have Georgia Baum, one of our staff members here, as our speaker. And she will be speaking to the clinical description of gestational diabetes, speaking to some of the diagnostic processes and some of those risk factors as well. So if you're interested in a fuller piece about the clinical aspects of GDM, we will be dealing with those next month. We also, in a separate series, have our IDHC webinar series, and on Thursday this week we have Kathleen Laforme, our Diabetes Wellness Coordinator, discussing managing diabetes and prevention of complications. So she's going to share some personal stories with that, and that's a series that is suitable for anyone, frontline workers or the general public. Someone here is asking me about the Facebook name so they can follow and register for the next session. The link to the Facebook page is here at the bottom of this slide, and you can follow us on there. And if you do fill out the evaluation at the end of the series today, at the end of the session today, you will also have an opportunity to request to be on our mailing list so that I can send you directly any information that's coming up. We've got someone here in the chat box also recommending for more information to follow Creator's Garden on Facebook as well. Joseph Pitawanakwat offers alternative and holistic health information and plant-based medicine. He comes from Manitoulin and is from a long line of traditional midwives. And that's a great plug actually as well. We've got Joseph coming to speak for us in October. So again, keep an eye on our Facebook page and add yourself to the mailing list, and you'll get information on that as well. Okay, so I do have another question here for Crystal. What is the best way to offer support to a newly diagnosed gestational diabetes patient who has learning disabilities or is not intellectually able to understand most resources available? We've got some hard-hitting questions today.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Where's that question? Is it in the chat box?
It's in the
just trying to. I really have to say I don't know what the best way is. I'm going to be honest about that. I don't know what the best way is. Being a diabetes wellness worker and servicing the broader Indigenous community with regards to health promotion and general programming, I don't often come into contact with clients, specific clients of gestational diabetes, and not working in the clinical aspect also prevents me from coming into contact with clients that are being diagnosed with diabetes and may have intellectual challenges. So my best recommendation or suggestion is to, within the workplace and within your team, to explore ideas around that and to gather resources around those specific circumstances. As we know, with today, it was a general presentation, and with regards to clientele, that is a whole nother aspect, right? That's a whole nother aspect. And I do feel for any clinical workers here, because you are working directly with people in their journey of management. And so I do suggest to, explore that subject deeper and to connect with your teams in order to come up with effective strategies for, supporting people who are diagnosed with diabetes and have intellectual challenges.
Thank you, Crystal. Those are great recommendations. I think sometimes we have these really unique cases in lots of different communities where we have an individual that maybe doesn't fit all of our programming models. And I think you're right, working with a team is a really great opportunity to troubleshoot and try creative new approaches. Maybe too late for this person by the time we get to Series 6 and talk about some facilitation skills, but one of the things we've been talking about here internally as a team is about using some of the resources that we have at IDHC. So I don't know, Crystal, if you have the water bottle there or the portion plate.
Yes, I do. So these are great visuals. I find that definitely even just providing general programming in my years of doing this work, visually stimulating materials is a really good way to go. So there's the water bottle here, and then of course the portion plates for child and parent. Okay, so 2 different sizes there. So those are 2 examples of visual resources.
So I think that, you know, maybe a suggestion when you're working with clients that maybe do have some challenges taking on the messaging, or maybe are overwhelmed even with all the learning that has to come along with managing diabetes or gestational diabetes, is sometimes to access some of those visual or more tangible resources that we have to offer and use them as an example. So instead of handing out a whole bunch of reading material, maybe saying we have these portion plates, and one of the things you can work on is trying to, you know, follow the food categories on the portion plate and eat using the portion plate to practice healthier eating. So that's something that's a little more functional and a little bit less theoretical, that might be easier for people who are hands-on learners, or someone maybe who does have learning disabilities and can't take on some of that higher level teachings around, you know, exactly the number of different servings and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asked, where did you get the portion plates for the child and the parent? So those are actual resources that we here at the IDHC do offer. As I mentioned, if you do fill in our evaluation at the end of the series today, which you will be linked to automatically, if you fill that in, you'll have the opportunity to request a pregnancy kit free of charge. We'll mail it to you, and the pregnancy kit does contain a portion plate for the child and a portion plate for the parent. So that's a resource that we can send out to you. Okay, I'll put out one last call for questions here. It's looking quiet on my end, but any last questions? We'll give you a chance to type them. Oh, someone else also asked, the yoga DVD, can you show it online without copyright issues?
Yes. Yeah, so I believe the yoga DVD can also be recopied. If you have that capability to burn DVDs, we don't mind if they're reproduced.
Yeah, we'd love it if you would share that with your communities.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in today's world with COVID, it's a challenge with some of the programming you might typically offer, but one of the things we would encourage is things like maybe pulling a group together on a Zoom call or something and sharing the video. You can share those DVD videos over Zoom, or with a group that's maybe distant and can't meet in person today because of some of those COVID restrictions. So absolutely, please do feel free to share it with the people that you work with. Okay. Well, I again want to take this opportunity to thank you, Crystal. Wonderful presentation today. I really look forward to meeting up with you again over the course of this series. Georgia will be our primary speaker next month, but I know you're back with us again later in this series. I really do appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us, and it's been a good little taste today of what's to come. And I know that when we really hit your true areas of expertise and your passions in the stress reduction and the physical activity and nutrition sessions in a couple of months, that we are really both going to learn a lot together, and you'll be able to share a lot of that information with everybody who's joining us. So with that, I think still quiet on the question board, so I think we will sign off. Thank you to everybody for joining us today. Again, my final plug to check out our Facebook page and to fill out that evaluation form so we can hook you up with some resources. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay. Okay, we're done.